Junior Caminero is probably very day-to-day, according to manager Kevin Cash. We have Jason Collette here to talk about that and a whole lot more coming up on the RotoWire Fantasy Baseball Podcast. Welcome to the RotoWire Fantasy Baseball Podcast. I'm Clay Link of RotoWire, here with Jason Collette today. We are brought to you by Fantrax. I want to thank them for their sponsorship. Jason stepping in for Todd today. Todd is enjoying the weather down in Florida, the spring training game. I think the Red Sox putting on quite a show for him too today. So good for Todd. And Jason, thanks so much for your time today, man. I appreciate you carving out a little time on your Friday.
Yeah, apologies for the look. I am in a cage watching on YouTube, maybe a little bit of echo, but this hotel is kind of like doubles as a nightclub almost. So I am making the best of a situation here on a good Friday afternoon before I head over to watch my alma mater UCF play a baseball game tonight.
Oh, this should be fun, man. I'm happy that you and Todd both get to enjoy a little baseball today. I'm looking forward to seeing you guys both here in just about a week.
A week from today, yeah.
New York, yeah, it's going to be. It comes up so soon every year, but so suddenly every year. But I'm excited about it. Can't wait to see you guys and see everybody in person if you can make it. Hopefully, I'll see your face. And as I mentioned at the top of the show, Jason, Junior Caminero, back tightness. Again, Kevin Cash saying very day-to-day, so it doesn't sound like anything too serious. But I'm wondering, do you think this kind of pumps the brakes on Junior Caminero's momentum? Should it pump the brakes a little bit? Because he has been a steady riser, and this feels like something that could potentially keep his cost down a little bit.
I mean, your back would be sore too if you were carrying the expectations of a franchise on it, right? So in all seriousness, perhaps it was that barehanded play he made a couple of days ago. He looked really good doing it and threw someone. I forgot the runner, but perhaps it was that particular play that caused him to do that. So, maybe if you're drafting this weekend, let's be real. Right now, every bit of news is moving the needle in some direction or another, whether it's Gunnar Henderson, Grayson Rodriguez. Reynaldo Lopez was 3 to 4 miles an hour down today in his outing. So every bit of news is moving the needle in some type of direction. And with Caminero, perhaps if he was going early in the fourth round, maybe he's an end of fourth round pick this weekend. And then if everything's fine, he's back up in the third round next weekend. Every day something happens. I mean, let's think back to this time last year. It was Shohei Ohtani in his shoulder. We weren't sure, right? There were a lot of people that ended up with Aaron Judge, Shohei Ohtani on the turn in 15-team leagues and ran away with it just because of those two. Because that's what happens. So every bit of news is something. You just have to decide what your risk factor is and go from there with it. But honestly, I'm not concerned. I would still be drafting if we were having AL labor tonight. I would still pay the same $23 I paid for Junior Caminero a week ago.
Yeah, it seems unlikely to really halt his rise up the draft board. I took him in the 6th round of the TGFBI. I'm sorry, 7th round. Or no, I'm sorry, 5th round. I keep getting that wrong. 5th round, 67th overall. I believe Peter Shanky of RotoWire said that he went in the 3rd round of his, which is shocking. So
maybe that's where I got it from, because I've seen him in the few of the drafts that I did in February. I saw him right there, towards the end of 5, right on the 5-6 turn. That's where I continued. And funny, it was like always right in front of me, even though I was never like going like, oh, I'm going to take him. He's going to come to me. Never expecting he would. It was always like right before I was entertained. Like, you know what? If he gets to me, never mind. And he was gone. So I kept seeing him right there in that situation. But honestly, it doesn't surprise me to see somebody jump in the 3rd. There's always somebody.
Yeah, I could see that being kind of a regular occurrence come the main events if this back issue does dissipate as expected. And you mentioned Grayson Rodriguez had one fastball topped out or not topped out, but one fastball clocked at 89.5 miles per hour. Said after that outing that it was more so by design, but if a guy is having trouble getting on top of the ball and really driving it, it makes sense that the team would want to kind of get in there and check to be sure of the health of the arm and whatnot. So despite his adamance that he was healthy, the Orioles sent Grayson Rodriguez for tests. Sore tricep, just day to day for now, but this feels ominous, doesn't it?
Never trust the player when they're talking about injury news. Just never do it. So when you first saw that, he said he couldn't get on top, couldn't get behind the ball. Well, physically, maybe there was a problem why you couldn't do that. But never trust the player on these injury news. I've said this for the longest time. Whatever the timeline, whatever a player says, just add another 2 to 3 weeks to it, and then that player's back to where you want them to be. Because even if a guy is back physically, he's not 100% back. Nobody ever leaves and then comes right back and picks up where they left off. And I would apply this. I mentioned, about a minute and a half ago about Reynaldo Lopez. He was down 4 miles an hour in his first inning. He was down 3 in the second inning over his average fastball velocity last year. That's the last thing you want to see from Reynaldo Lopez, considering how he ended last season. And so that's the concern. Again, if you're drafting this weekend, we're recording this Friday afternoon, you're drafting this weekend, you have to factor that in where Reynaldo Lopez is going to go. These are two guys that I was pretty excited about Grayson Rodriguez coming into the season, but that news gives me pause. I drafted Reynaldo Lopez in my RotoWire OC. I took him. And I'm concerned now with that, but I drafted that one 9 days ago with that. But you got to be looking at these things and velocity dips. Some of it may be just a tired arm, but if it's tired now, then are they going to start the season on time? Are they going to miss a couple of starts? Type of situation. It stinks, but it's the reality of pitching. They're made to break your heart.
We just got some news here in the last 10 minutes or so on Christian Walker. According to Matt Kawahara of the Houston Chronicle, Christian Walker's MRI did not show a strain or anything that we are concerned about, according to manager Joe Espada. Team calling it a left oblique soreness, and Walker's going to return to the team today and will be eased back into activities. So that kind of, I think, bumped him down a fair amount, this ultrasound for Christian Walker on his oblique. But maybe he will, rise again up the draft boards. I've been a little reluctant to take him, even though first base kind of has a drop-off after him. I actually like Tristan Casas a little more at first base. Mm-hmm. Even though he's dealing with an issue himself right now. He's sick.
You may be the only one afraid to take him because in the drafts, not that I have Christian Walker anywhere, he's never made it to me. I made the comment about Caminero. I keep seeing Walker when I'm entertaining. Okay, perhaps I'll go here. He's gone, and he's been going early. I see him continue to creep up. Everybody's in love with the move to Houston and how the ballpark should do really well for him in the lineup. The situation is like, if you look at this news, it's good news that so far so good with everything. You try to figure out what Houston is going to do with this lineup because Altuve in the outfield appears to be a real thing. They're going to stick with that and go on from that. But I'm more concerned about the bottom third of that lineup, what they're going to do, because it's a very glove first approach with Chas McCormick and Brendan Rodgers and Jake Myers, particularly Myers, who is one of the better outfielders by outs above average. So how many of those glove first types can you carry with that when you've got offensive options? You have Cam Smith, you have Shea Whitcomb. I'm mentioning deeper league names right now, but I'm concerned about how much glove first the Astros can carry in this lineup because they have to. This is the post Kyle Tucker experience. And yes, you added Paredes, and yes, you added Walker, but what if Paredes continues where he left off last year in Chicago? And while we believe that his whole approach is just perfect for Houston, what if it's not? Then what happens with this lineup? And just overall, I'm just kind of concerned what Houston's going to do offensively because they have to change their DNA of the way they've done things. Instead of having the motion on the bases, the way Tucker could do that, they very much look like a softball team in the middle of that lineup now. And I'll be curious to see how it works for them.
Yeah, man. I haven't had the choice in a draft between Walker and Tristan Casas, who I mentioned. I guess I like to wait a little bit, then get a guy like Casas a little bit later. Mm-hmm. But Walker really like the skills he brings to the table. But I'm with you on Houston as a team. It feels like after that run of 7 consecutive ALCS appearances, it feels like maybe their window closing here. I mean, still have Altuve, still have Yordan Alvarez, and the Framber Valdez, Hunter Brown on the pitching side. But it feels like maybe this is the year where they really start to see, as an organization, a step back overall for this team. But we'll have to wait and see. Casas, by the way, sick right now. I kind of Uh, Alex Cora made it sound pretty bad, actually. I kind of had a picture in my head of like Jeff Daniels in Dumb and Dumber, just like fighting for his life. But hopefully Christian Walker is okay. And Sandy Alcantara, I wanted to just run this by you, Jason. He was a guy I'd moved up my rankings. Was pretty excited about what he was showing early on in spring training, plus pretty far removed from that Tommy John surgery. But then in Jeff Passan's recent article at ESPN, saying that Alcantara will face an innings limit, especially early on. The implication seems to be that they're doing that as a way to entice contenders and potentially trade Walker or trade Alcantara. Then the team that acquires him would, in theory, have Alcantara fully available for October if the Marlins manage him and limit him early on. What do you make of this supposed plan for Sandy Alcantara?
Does it work? Because I don't ever recall. I've seen this called the reverse crochet, where instead of like letting them eat and then back them up, you're just going to limit them and then let them eat. And I don't know if we have precedents to say this works. So if we don't have precedents, why are you trying this? I don't get it. I mean, to me, you mentioned Casas, so let's just go with Boston. Boston has arguably the best farm system in baseball. You can only use so many of these guys, and they're trying to put these guys in there right now with Meyer and Christian Campbell, and Roman Anthony. They're trying to find room for all these guys right now, and they can't do it. And how many times every fan base has probably gone through this at some point. I went through this with the Rays years ago. It's like, okay, you can't use all these guys, trade them, and then they don't, and then 2/3 of them don't work out and they get hurt. And it's like, see, I told you so. To me, if I'm the Marlins, I just put up like, hey, give me your best final offer. Put it out there. We're doing this, and let somebody else deal with this. Because if they do this reverse crochet and he's pitching 3 innings and then 4 innings and then 5 innings, and let's say you get him at the end, you get him in June, and because you don't want to wait till the deadline to do this. You want this player, you want to start using this player so they make an impact on your roster. So if you make that trade late, then you got to build them up. You can't just say, okay, yeah, I want him in there for 7. Fans want to see it. We just traded for this guy. I try to make an offer for the guy now, give him that best final offer, and Miami can move on from that. We already know it's going to be a rough year in Miami, so what's the point with this? But I don't know how this is good for the player because we don't have this precedent working. And every time we try to get cute with something, tandem starting in the minors or whatever, the end result it doesn't work out as well as we wanted to. So I'm hoping for the pitcher. I'm hoping for us as baseball fans that Sandy Alcantara is not a Marlin for much longer.
Yeah, man. A really good point that we have no proof that any sort of management like this helps the player at all. It could help the team potentially, but not really something that we have any evidence to suggest is going to help Alcantara's career path. But yeah, I saw I think it was MLB Network, maybe Harold Reynolds suggesting could be dealt before opening day. Always a possibility, but very much seems like Alcantara will be on the move. I do like what the price, especially this year, is if even with an innings limit early on, I still think Alcantara, where he's going right now, makes for pretty nice value. He was on Passan's list of 10 players who are, scouts are buzzing about. And,
well, you also have, the other thing is, as great as the player is in a vacuum, team context has to be addressed. And again, this is a terrible team. And now that he's on a terrible team, and he won't, he's always been on a terrible team, I'm sorry, but now he won't even have the context of getting to a win if they're going to put him on that restriction. So now we're talking about a guy that we're essentially working as a middle reliever, but he's an opener. He's a bulk opener, and he's not going to get far enough. So, okay, the ratios, but if he's only working 3 to 4 innings, is that going to be enough to get, again, it's just, Marlins, do us a favor as baseball fans, fantasy baseball managers. Let's enjoy this talent where it could be best utilized. If he gets hurt again, so is pitching. Like I said, you can't count on any of them, so you may as well try to make the most of the current situation. And this reverse crochet thing, I just don't get it.
Well, we will spend some time on the show discussing some bold predictions. Jason had his bold prediction series go up on the site earlier this year, and talk about some of those bold predictions, and I'll offer some of mine as well. We'll also talk about Jason's AL LABR auction draft that he completed along with 11 others just a few days ago. But let's real quick pause briefly for a quick prepaid word from our sponsors. All right, we're back here on the RotoWire Fantasy Baseball Podcast. Clay Lang here with Jason Collette today. Jason filling in for Todd Zola, and really glad to have Jason with us. And Jason, you finally won that elusive AL LABR crown back in 2023, and then our own James Anderson knocked you off last year. And reading your review up on the site right now, definitely check it out. Collect calls. Sounds like you're taking a little bit of a page out of James Anderson's book this year in your approach to the draft.
Yeah, I wanted more power. I mean, when James and I were neck and neck all year, like he was in first, then I took over, and then I even wrote an article about it in early September. It was like, James is winning this league. I have the lead, and I know it's going to fall apart. It's a house of cards, and it's going to come tumbling down. Sure enough, it did. And like one of the key factors for James when what he did was outbidding me for Lawrence Butler off the free agent wire by $1. And you look at that second half that Butler did, that carried him. Because in the immediate moment, I was blaming the terrible August that Cutter Crawford and Taj Bradley had. But at the end of the day, I went back and looked. I was first or second in every pitching category except for wins, where I was 10th. And yes, the fact that neither of those guys could stay in there and then they went 0 for August certainly didn't help that. But I lost to James by more than 5 points in the wins that I lost there. And so when I looked at it, and in 2023, I won the league because I invested in pitching in a league in the year where the offense was up. In 2024, I finished second place, could have won, and a couple other things gone my way. And so this year, it was like, okay, do I lean back on what has worked really well for me the past few years? Or do I try a third option? And I decided, you know what? I really like the AL pitching pool. I'm very comfortable in my knowledge about pitchers. I have a very good track record of taking good pitchers and getting the results from what I need in this LABR format. Because listeners and viewers, LABR, you don't get to bench guys unless they get demoted or sent to the minors, or injured or sent to the minors. So that's it. So last year when Cutter Crawford and Taj Bradley couldn't get anybody out, I had to cut them. Well, if I cut them, there wasn't exactly anybody out there to pick up. So it's like, that's why I carried those guys, because they were starting pitchers and I was still hoping to get wins. And that was the easiest way I could try to do it. And I had enough of a ratios cushion that I could afford to do that. So I felt comfortable in my pitching, and I was like, I'm going to make the investment in offense and do the most I can in offense without going the Andy Andrus. Andy Andrus loves buying the hitting. He spent like 210 and 215, sometimes 220. I didn't want to get into that game with him, but I did want to distance myself from the rest of the pack. It's okay to finish second in a bunch of hitting categories, or second, third, or fourth. You want to stay competitive. Last year, I had anywhere from 6 to 9 points in the hitting categories, and then I was 11, 11, 12, 12, 3 in wins. So I wanted to, again, really address offense without ignoring pitching. I don't want to get too confident and say, oh, I know the pitching pool, I'll get everybody I want. It will be great. So that was my approach overall this year.
Well, I love the junior Caminero pickup, as you mentioned earlier. $23 seems like a pretty good value. I feel like future AL only auctions from here will probably go for $3-4 more. We'll see, but big ticket item was Bobby Witt Jr. at 46. And then do you have a crystal ball or something? Because Curtis Mead at $2. The guy's 14 for 18 this spring. Seems to be crushing it. Although I will say, like, he wasn't a total nobody as a prospect. He had a little bit of prospect buzz. Not a total scrub just out of nowhere. So it seems like Curtis Mead probably playing his way onto this team.
I hope so. I mean, there's a couple of things there. I will tell you, coming into the draft, neither Bobby, I did not have Junior Caminero or Bobby Witt Jr. as absolute must-gets. I had both players valued at what I paid for them, or even slightly higher. And so Bobby Witt was the first person I purchased. I had Bobby Witt valued in this standard 5x5 format, AL with shortstop. I had Bobby Witt as a $47 player. So he was at 45, and it was early. I said, okay, if I say 46, somebody says 47, I walk out, I'm fine. But I said 46, everybody stopped. So I'm like, okay, I have Bobby Witt. That's a good problem to have. And same thing with Caminero. I had Caminero valued at 24. And somebody said 22, I said 23, and he stopped. I figured, it's a rating. Jason says 23, somebody's going to push him off. But it didn't happen. So that's how I ended up with those two. And with Mead,
the problem, he was having a great spring, and he's continued to have this great spring. And he's added 20 pounds of muscle this offseason. And remember, he was the guy that Phillies traded to the Rays for Christopher Sanchez. When that deal happened, everybody was like, oh my God, the Rays ripped the Phillies off. And then that script has pretty much flipped. Everybody's like, wow, Christopher Sanchez has been great, and Curtis Mead's been terrible. Well, there's a reason why people liked Curtis Mead back in the day. We knew he could hit. It's just defensively, where was he going to play?
And honestly, I don't know if that question's still been answered. I don't know where his defensive home is, but he's added this bulk. We knew he had a good hit tool, and he's showing it off this spring. The problem, he has the curse of options. He has options. Eloy Jimenez is a non-roster minor league invite. He doesn't have options. So it's like he could make the club because he can't be sent down. If they like what they see, but Mead is trying to force his way into this picture, and he can play third base. He can play second. He could play a little bit of different places, but not as an everyday player. But if he can hit like this, that gives them an option off the bench to utilize. And that's what I was looking at. I needed somebody at second base that really wasn't on. This was one of my last picks. I think it was my penultimate offensive pick. And that's why I took him, because I figured he could probably get another position during the season. He's coming in at second base, and there are second base options available. And even on my roster, I already had Richie Palacios and Dylan Moore that qualified as second, so I can move something around like that as well. So that's where I see that. And like I said, he's really trying to force his way onto this roster, and it's going to be tough to say no. Sorry, you got to go back to Durham the way he's hit this spring.
Yeah, I keep seeing Eloy in those spring lineups, like, clean up through sixth or whatever, and it's like, yeah, maybe, Eloy. I wouldn't put it past the Rays to, find something else there and untap a new level for him. But
perhaps, I mean, they typically don't carry hitting only profiles. You have to be able to play somewhere in the field. And Eloy can't. He's just not good. And perhaps Curtis Mead gained the 20 pounds that Eloy Jimenez lost, because Jimenez is slimmer. He's not the big guy, but he was never good in the field to begin with. And so that we'll see how this goes. But so far, you would have to say Mead has the very early lead in camp. But again, the curse of options is a real thing, and it could hurt his ability to make the major league roster.
Yeah, that's a really good point. Another Ray you got in AL LABR, the League of Alternative Baseball Reality, Shane McClanahan. By the way, LABR has Wikipedia pages, probably the only fantasy baseball league with Wikipedia pages. But Shane McClanahan at 15 feels like a really good deal. It feels like kind of like Sandy Alcantara. He's essentially back to where he was, back to pre-surgery form. But unlike Alcantara, I haven't seen any set limitations or any reports of innings limit. They probably will take measures to limit McClanahan, one of those being a 6-man rotation to start the season. But I'm really excited about the possibilities with a guy like this who, we've seen perform at an extremely high level. And I guess the big question for me is, what is Steinbrenner Park going to do to this pitching staff?
Yeah, that is the big unknown, because we know that what Tropicana Field did to help the pitching staff with how tough it's been on offense, and particularly pitchers with rising fastballs like McClanahan and crew have. So we're going to have to see how that plays out, and we're going to get enough of a sample size early on, because the Rays have a heavy home schedule early on. That could help offensively. If the park does play well for the offense, it has to play better than Tropicana Field did. It has the same dimensions as Yankee Stadium up north, but it doesn't have the same weather conditions as Yankee Stadium up north, and that's where we have to see where things come into play with that. So I'm excited, because the Rays home offense sometimes is outright unwatchable at Tropicana Field. So that be able to see it outdoors is going to be different, to say the least, as somebody who's watched the team play indoors since its inception in 1998. And the first time I sit down this season and tune in for a game and there's a rain delay, I'm going to be pissed. That is one of the things I never had to worry about for a home game with it. But overall, I am a little bit concerned with the pitching staff. I would say, like, if they were still at Tropicana Field, there's no way McClanahan goes for only $15, not with his upside. But again, I had him as a $15 player, and when somebody said 14, I said 15. I would not have said 17. And if I had been in that even number channel, I would not have gone to 16. That was as high as I was willing to go there for both the pitcher and what I was planning to do with my pitching budget. I really wanted to stay
under the
15 to $17 range for pitchers. And I did that for the most part. I did have to go a buck or two higher for Joe Ryan. But other than that, that was my plan. I was staying at a tier 1 pitching, and I wanted to try to quantity my way to the numbers I wanted to get at the end.
Oh, I like that. And one of your $1 ads here that I thought was interesting, I'm starting to hear some more buzz about him. Alan Roden of the Toronto Blue Jays. He 25 years old now and reached AAA last year. Really impressive plate skills he put on display last year at AAA. 41 strikeouts to 35 walks and 286 plate appearances. Up in the air right now, of course, but how do you see him potentially fitting in with Toronto? Alan Roden.
So I see Toronto as a team with a bad outfield. They have an aging George Springer. They don't have a lot of good conditions. I don't like Toronto this year. I see them repeating as a 5th place team. And so once you're doing that, look at what else you have. And you look at Alan Roden, and as you said, he gets on base. And one of my favorite quotes of when I did the media work around Tampa Bay part-time with radio, Joe Madden loves saying this: if you're walking, you're hitting. Well, Alan Roden, that's all he's done in his minor career is walk, but he also doesn't strike out. So it's not like he's up there trying to I'm just going to take a walk because I can't hit. He can hit. He hit as a Creighton Blue Jay. He's hit as a Toronto Blue Jay in their system. And even this spring, 15 plate appearances, 4 walks, 0 strikeouts. And he's the GM has taken notice. I don't know if he's going to make the team, but again, I can send him down to my reserves. And I drafted Miguel Andujar, and I mentioned Shea Whitcomb earlier. I just need one of those 2 guys to make the roster, and I have my replacement until the Jays figure out what they're going to do. But take a look at that Jays lineup. The one thing it's sorely missing is somebody that knows how to get on base at the top of the lineup. That used to be what George Springer did, but that was George Springer 5 years ago. And they had a guy, they got rid of him, and Spencer Horowitz. That would have been his role. And I look at Roden, and that's what I see with Alan Roden, is a guy that knows how to get on base, that's going to force his way into the lineup. And he's not a bum. You can listen to the AL East prospect, the prospect podcast that Paul Sporer and Eric Longenhagen did at Fangraphs last week. And Longenhagen was like, this guy could be in a major league lineup regular right now every day. I was thrilled to get him at $1 at the end of the draft, because it was after that, honestly, I didn't see anything else I wanted. And this was the guy, you're just looking for upside that late. And I just see a guy that has a lot of upside and a very low floor, given what his skill set is. You're not looking for 20-plus home runs. You're looking for don't kill me at batting average and score some runs. And that's what I feel he can do.
Yeah, you make a lot of really good points, especially about that Toronto outfield. It's Springer, but then Varsho's iffy for opening day. He's been playing, but DHing, and still uncertain if he'll be able to play the field for opening day.
I actually like Varsho this year, but he's like the only one out there that I'd like and I would put back on my roster.
Yeah, Joey Loper-Fito's questionable. Davis Schneider, we saw that quick flash in the pan. But I don't expect Anthony Santander to play much outfield. So,
no.
Would seem to be some potential for playing time there in the outfield for Alan Roden. Anybody else on your labor team that you were excited to grab, that you were maybe a fist pumping about?
Well, getting Noah Cameron for $1 at the end, I'm really excited about what he could potentially do for Kansas City. Kansas City has had an unprecedented amount of starting pitching health the last couple of years. And like last year, 25 starts from all 5 of their guys. And we have not, they were the only team that could say that. And I believe it was the Astros in 22 or 23 is the only other post-COVID team that could claim that. And it's really tough to look at pitching staff and say, oh yeah, they'll do that again. And Cameron's the next guy up. He's already on the 40-man roster, and he was my last pitching pick. So I was pretty happy to get him at that. And then the other one for single digit, to get Spencer Arrighetti in his upside. I know Arrighetti's overall numbers don't look too impressive, 7 wins and 28 starts. But go back and look at his game logs, and then look at what he did towards the end of the season. I mean, he had ended up with 4 starts with 10 or more strikeouts. And there were some other outings early on where he hit some rough patch, but the roller coaster ride of Arrighetti was a little tough, but you could see the upside there. And for a guy on a team that won the division that was an 87 to 89 win team to only win 7 of his 28 starts, that's just rotten luck. When you see that Jose Barrios won 16 of his 31 starts for a 74-win team. So, those things kind of balance out. I'm looking at Arrighetti as a guy that's going to have double-digit wins, have the strikeouts, and hopefully the ratios are in a little better shape with some more consistency as a second-year pitcher.
I like what you did with your first catcher spot too. Shea Bangaliers, if you will. $16 in a 2-catcher AL only seems pretty reasonable given his pop. Could take another step forward, and like we talked about with the Rays, the question is the new home park there, but I think generally the expectation is that it will benefit the offense playing there in West Sacramento, which is a PCL park.
Look at it, and the funny thing is, it wasn't on the higher end of offense for the PCL, but that's like who you surround yourself with. Like, I would be one of the shortest guys on an NBA team, but if I stand around the Tout Wars room, I'm one of the tallest guys. So it's who you surround yourself with, and that's the thing. The leaders just small numbers.
Everything.
His small numbers weren't that great, and that's where I'm excited to see where Langoliers getting away from basically the restrictor plate that was on him at Oakland Coliseum. And I had no problem paying it $16 when I see Adley Rutschman go 19. I see Yannier Diaz go $27. And Ryan Jeffers was somebody else that I would have considered. He went after Langoliers and went $13. But AL catchers not terribly deep, and if you don't want to pay for the two biggest ones, Langoliers is kind of third in line. If you build your team so you can insulate the batting average risk, then go for it. Or if you're somebody like Jeff Zimmerman's talked enough about this, sometimes he didn't even draft for batting average. He didn't care. I'll figure it out. I'm not going to let batting averages deter me. I know it's a weakness of this team, but I have enough power that I'm fine with finishing in the middle of the pack if I can with batting average, or trying to chase batting average on the free agent wire, because it's easier to chase average than it is to chase power and look for home runs and RBIs in season.
Well, good luck, man. I wish you the best as you try to hunt down another title, and I think you have a heck of a team in place here to do that. Well, let's move on to bold predictions. You have your bold prediction series out every year at RotoWire. You're probably sick of talking about these for this year, but we'll run through a few more of them. I'll offer up some of mine as well. And we'll start with my favorite division, of course, the NL Central. Everybody's favorite division, right? But no, I'm really excited about my Reds, given that, of course, they had Tito Francona. I think Terry Francona is essentially equivalent of like a 5 to 8 win player. I just think it's so big for a team that was so bad with fundamentals last year and base running, things like that. To get them with a team like this is going to be pretty exciting. But we'll start first with the Cubs. And I just want to ask you, because I've been drafting Pete Crow Armstrong a few places, not in TGFBI, but I did get him in the first pitch Arizona Speakers draft. I've seen a lot of people talking about his speed this spring. Others, though, questioning if maybe he's a heirs merchant, just taking advantage of some sloppy outfield and some sloppy defense behind him this spring and running wild. But you don't like him as a top 60 outfielder. Do you think he ends up platooning? What are the big downside points here with Pete Crow Armstrong?
Yeah, and this may be one of those by the end of the season where it's like people are like, "Man, what were you thinking, Jason? Why were you down on him?" And I say this in the write-up, like perhaps it's my post-traumatic Kevin Kiermaier disorder, where I see the same type of player that can play great defense, that can fly around the field, but when he goes into a slump, he doesn't have the other skills to offset that. And if he can't get on base, he can't steal the base, and all of a sudden, what are you left with? And you look at what Crow Armstrong has done throughout the minor leagues. There have been some issues with contact at the time, and so that's my worry. It's like he's being drafted because he's a super great athlete. Now, I'm not questioning his athleticism, but when these types of players get in slumps, then it quickly falls apart. And I don't want to spend what he's going for, and he continues to climb throughout the draft. I have 0, and I have passed on him in every draft. I don't want anything up, and if I'm wrong on this one. But this is one of those players that I see way too much risk associated with him, but I appear to be in the minority because a lot of people are doing the exact opposite. I'm zagging and they're zigging towards him.
Well, I think you make some good points because, well, there are appealing aspects of that skill set. You know, he was off to a brutal start last year. When things are going bad for him, they get really bad. You don't really have that floor, as you kind of alluded to. So, we'll see. He did turn it on eventually, Pete Crow Armstrong, but we've seen how bad things can be over a prolonged stretch if he's not really feeling himself on the field. For the Reds, you threw out a bold prediction relating to Gavin Lux. My bold prediction, maybe this isn't so bold, but Matt McLain is a top 4 second baseman. He's being drafted like 6 second baseman, so that's not really bold. Maybe I should say top 3. Top 3 will be my bold prediction. He too made Jeff Passan's list of top 10 players that have scouts buzzing this spring, and suggesting that some evaluators say this time next year we could be talking about Matt McLain and Ellie De La Cruz as the best middle infield tandem in all baseball. So we've been waiting for it with Matt McLain. Injuries have gotten in the way. No appearances last year. Didn't make a single appearance in the majors, but 2023 played pretty well before an injury that year as well. It's all about getting over that injury. All about getting over that injury hump. Sorry.
I would say if you haven't listened to the with Rob Silver was on with James Anderson on podcast this week, strongly suggest folks listen to that. Rob does great work, but I was particularly intrigued by his breakdown of Ellie De La Cruz and mentioning how frequently De La Cruz ran last year when the opportunity presented itself. He used a metric that I've talked about in a lot of my columns, stolen base opportunity from Baseball Reference, where you're on first or second and the next base in front of you is unoccupied. And De La Cruz was running at a historic amount last year. And asking somebody to repeat at that level, and he even mentions like Ricky Henderson really wasn't doing it at that level at his peak. And so, he was saying it's pretty easy to look at a path where De La Cruz goes from 64, 67 steals, whatever he had last year, to 45, 50, just based off that. And if he's doing that and he's the batting average risk in the first round that other guys aren't, what are you left with? But again, go listen to Rob in his own words. I felt he did an excellent job of breaking that one down and giving people something to think about, which is the premise of all these bold predictions that you've done, Jeff done, that Jeff does, I've done. It's like, that's what I want people to do, is just think differently a little bit. Pete Armstrong's here. Why? What if? And I just want people to think a little bit differently and look at the other end of possible outcomes. Sometimes I may be higher on somebody, sometimes I may be lower, but I just want folks to think differently. At the end of the day, use your own best judgment. You don't have to take us at our word. Just take our input and do with it what you will.
Yeah, every player has a wide range of potential outcomes, and it's so easy to look on the positive side of those and kind of gloss over the downside risks. But it is important to see what could go wrong, where could things go awry for certain players. Over in the NL West, Jason, I liked your prediction on the hitting side for Colorado. Michael Toglia is the best Italian first baseman. I love to see that.
And to go bold there, that's a bold one. That's probably one of my bolder ones. As much as, especially Liam Toglia is ahead of this offseason, everybody loves Vinny Pasquantino. And Toglia certainly has its risks, but I would also say Colorado is one area that I've done extremely well. And these 2 years ago, I was all on Nolan Jones when the market wasn't. Last year, I was saying, go get Brenton Doyle. He's ridiculously cheap. His defense is so good, it's going to keep him in the lineup. And if he can make more contact and draw some more walks, he's going to have a big season. That's exactly what happened. So I feel like I had a little bit of pressure with the Rockies, but you can see Toglia really clobbers the baseball. And it's not like the Rockies have a whole bunch of stuff. They're like, all right, sorry, you're out next. Is they can afford to give him the opportunities to do this. And so I'm hoping to go 3 for 3 with the bold prediction in Colorado hitting, because Lord knows trying to predict any one of their fantasy pitchers has been awful. I mean, as many years as I've done this, I don't think I've ever come close. Last year may have been the closest with Victor Vodnik, because he did get 9 saves, but he didn't turn a positive dollar value. And I even tried lowering the bar every time I do a Rockies pitcher. I'm like, somebody's got to get you something. No, every year. And so I lean on that hitter success, and I believe Toglia really has the power tool to make this happen.
Yeah, and I've noticed a pretty big teardrop at first base after Toglia. So I want to get my first baseman around that range or have him locked up by that point. If Toglia is the guy I take there to avoid that teardrop, I'd be happy with it. I'm not actively seeking him out, but you make a lot of good points, and of course the Coors bump is huge. Todd and I were talking about Chase DeLander a while back, and like you said, it's just the Coors is undefeated. I learned that lesson with Herman Marquez. Everybody out there will learn that lesson eventually. But it does sound like
that's what you do with the reliever. You take the reliever in the 23rd round, and if he stinks, you cut him and you move on. You don't reach for a Rockies. I don't care. Somebody asked me today. I had friends like, "Hey, do you think Tyler Kinley?" Like, no. But what if he? No. We're moving on. We're trying something else. I mean, go get Seth Halverson if you want to. And try something else. Yeah, I mentioned Jaden Hill as a guy in that bullpen because coming out of college. He had 3 pitches that are already graded as a 60 hit plus on a 60-80 scale. That's great. Now his command's rotten, but he's got 3 pitches that are really, really good. If he's the one skill away and the command come together, and maybe some of his command is because he had to miss that time from TJ in college and he's just getting back. But sometimes you're just one skill away. I would make this case like this time last year. This was Lucas Erceg. Lucas Erceg had some good pitches, couldn't throw strikes. But if you can throw strikes, you can see how it came together. And sure enough, it came together for Lucas Erceg. And now I've even been in a draft where Lucas Erceg has gone before Carlos Esteves. That's how much Lucas Erceg's value has changed when he started showing some more command. And if Jaden Hill can get there, who knows? I know a lot of attentions on Seth Halverson, but if you're still on a 50-team drafting hold and you can take Jaden Hill in the 50th round, go for it.
Yeah, Erceg's pretty interesting because he was a guy who was a corner infielder for a long time before transitioning to the pitching mound. And I kind of give him, I don't know, maybe more of a buffer, more reason for optimism to think that maybe he could improve his walk rate because he's still relatively new to the craft. I guess I just feel like maybe he could still refine his skills a little bit more than some of these other, lifelong pitchers. Michael in the chat, his bold prediction is that Fernando Tatis plays a full season. I think at this point that is pretty bold. Yeah. We'll see about that. If so, I mean, he could be an easy first-round value, Fernando Tatis. My NL West bold prediction has to do with those Padres, and it's going to be that Terso Ornelas wins Rookie of the Year. Now, this one actually is pretty bold. My Reds one, not so bold. This one is Roki Sasaki of the Dodgers, the clear front runner in terms of betting odds for the NL Rookie of the Year, and looked pretty good in his first Cactus League appearance. Yep.
His splitter is absolutely ridiculous.
Yeah.
Absolutely. As somebody who grew up watching Mike Scott throw scuffed baseballs with nasty splitters, that's what Roki Sasaki looked like. I watched that outing the other night, and I could not believe the tumble he has on that splitter. That's just unbelievable.
Yeah, there were some murmurs that maybe he wasn't looking so impressive in the side sessions, but then you get him in a game setting, and even Dave Roberts said, this was the best we've seen him. Seemed like, with the blood and the adrenaline amped up a little bit, he was kind of turned it on and was a different pitcher. So yeah,
he went all Allen Iverson on us.
Sorry.
He went all Allen Iverson on his practice, man. We're talking about practice. I don't care if I gave up a home run to Kyle Teal in practice. Go ahead.
Well, that's talking my language because I was a big AI guy as a kid. Allen Iverson. Loved that guy. Still do love AI. Allen Iverson, not so much the other AI. But Terso Ornelas, 24 years old, had a monster year at AAA last year. It was PCL, but, 864 OPS, 23 homers, 89 RBI, a little bit of speed, not a big aspect of it. But I think if you're looking at other options in the NL, aside from Roki Sasaki, Ornelas makes a lot of sense because there's just not a lot standing in his way in that outfield. I mean, Jason Hayward, Connor Joe, we got Yuli Gurriel listed at DH. It feels like I know they brought in Jose Iglesias for the infield, but it feels like in the outfield there in San Diego, there's certainly opportunity.
And that's the key thing. I'm glad you brought that up. It's that opportunity thing because you can have better prospects. Go back and look at the rookies of the year over the years and look at some of them. You're like, how did that guy win Rookie of the Year? Because he got the opportunity to play, and other guys didn't. There are always going to be more talented guys out there, but if you don't have the opportunity, what good is it? And so you make a great point. You look at that bottom third, bottom 3-4 spots of that San Diego lineup. You're like, and something could happen. So that's where I love I love making opportunity picks. That's why I took Chase Meidroth as one of my reserves, LABR. It's one of the reasons why I have him. I have him like on 4 teams this year already because the opportunity. The White Sox are an open tryout camp for the most part. And Chase Meidroth was part of that Garrett Crochet trade, and that could work out. Wouldn't surprise me to see him in the Rookie of the Year consideration. Is he better than Roman Anthony or Christian Campbell? No. But is he going to have the opportunity to play potentially from day one? Yes. And that's all you need. The opportunity is the biggest part of it. And with that, so I like your selection when you look at those paths and the path of least friction. If there's little traffic in the way, I'm more intrigued by the opportunity than I am the true talent.
Yeah, man. Just look for avenues. Everybody likes to focus on the skills, and those should be your main point of focus, I think. But look at where a guy could, maybe sneak in. And talk about, obstacles that don't really intimidate you, if you even want to call them obstacles. But, Jason Hayward, barely holding on. Connor Joe, this team has high expectations too. So I don't see either of those guys having much of a leash. And Yuli Gurriel, who knows? A lot of different avenues for Terso or Nayless. Definitely a guy to keep in mind. 24 years old, lefty batter, by the way, and just you never know. Just a pretty highly touted prospect who, if it isn't Roki Sasaki, it could be Terso or Nayless. Well, let's pause real quick. I got to take care of a little piece of business here. Bring you a couple of brief words from our sponsors, including Fantrax. Fantrax is the most customizable fantasy platform in the industry, offering the greatest fantasy experience for your dynasty, keeper, redraft, and best ball leagues. Coming from another service, Fantrax makes it easy. Fantrax can import any of your current leagues and customize if needed. Fantrax offers the most in-depth player pool in the industry, including minor league players. Do you need a customizable commissioner service for your fantasy league? Fantrax offers more customization than any other platform. Waivers, categories, scoring system, schedule. Fantrax offers custom solutions for all that and more, and it's all free. Sign up for free today and be entered to win an official MLB signed jersey from my guy, Vladimir Guerrero Jr. Simply go to fantrax.com/rotowire and sign up today. That's fantrax.com/rotowire. Fantrax, the home of fantasy sports. I'm pretty surprised that Toronto didn't take up Vladdy Jr.'s counteroffer for under $600 million. That feels like
that had to break your heart as much of a Vladdy guy as you are.
Yeah, I feel like the Blue Jays, had a decent deal on their hands, but they passed it up. Also, from our friends over at the NFBC, the NFBC RotoWire Fantasy Baseball Online Championship is live. Play fantasy baseball against your favorite RotoWire experts on NFBC this baseball season. Jeff Erickson, James Anderson, Clay Link, that's me, and more will compete in the RotoWire NFBC Online Championship for a shot at $150,000. Sign up for a draft today at rotowire.com/high stakes. That's rotowire.com/high stakes. Did you do your Beat Jason Collette draft already?
I did. I did it on Thursday night. It was weird because I have not yet won a RotoWire Online Championship. I finished second, I believe, twice in my own league, but everybody else in the room had a trophy next to their name except for me, which was humbling to say the least. But I did mine on Thursday night, and I would not advise doing a 12-team mixed OC and then going into an AL-only league the next night because that made it a little rough labor. All of a sudden, I'm like, it's the 6th round. Where's everybody? They're all gone. And so that was a little bit of a challenge for me. But I was happy to get the OC done. So I believe I'm done with my NFBC drafts. I have a couple of drafting holds, RotoWire OC. That's it. I cut back I'm not doing TGFBI this year, and I told Justin. I would do it if there was a draft and hold, but I really have to peel back on my free agent. I need my Sunday nights back, man. I don't know about you, but I was I can't. I had to really strategically. I did drop 3 leagues this winter, and each of them were fat leagues. I love draft and hold. I would play a lot more of those. I probably should get into a best ball, gladiator, try to do one, but I had to get rid of fat leagues because it was just taking up too much time on Sundays between podcasting in the morning, free agent research, and everything. I had to cut back.
And so no TGFIF for me. So I am done. I have talent, and I've got the GDD league online, and I have one more home league, and that's it.
It's interesting that you mentioned that because I'm in the same boat, man. I just decided, like, I had to reclaim my Sundays, just like you.
Yeah.
Like, you work all week, and then do you really want to spend 6 to 8 hours doing fab on a Sunday? That's just deflating, and
you can do all the research.
Takes away from the fun.
It does. I mean, you can do all the research and have it all stacked and racked, but you still got to go input it. You still have to go in there and set up your waterfalls, and that's the time consumer. So it's like, okay, yeah, I know I can copy other things, but if I only have to do that for this year, I'm going to have one CBS two. I'm going to have WARF, and I'm going to have the RotoWire season. I only have 2 NFBC ones. That's going to make life a little easier because then I've got 2 CBS leagues that I'll have to do that as well. So 4 FAB leagues in total. I'm in 8 leagues overall, and that was the ratio I wanted to get it down to. I wanted to get down to 8 or fewer leagues, and I wanted to have half of those as FAB leagues. So that's where I'm sitting this year.
In addition to cutting down on leagues, I'm also implementing Jenny Butler's strategy of just kind of keeping a notebook throughout the week. It seems like, you work in that industry, you should know, but I think just keeping a running list throughout the week is just going to save me time, and just make things faster on Sunday. It's all about, look, I want to reclaim some of my weekend, and this is one way to do it. And I think having a running list, a physical notebook, I think is going to help me. Just having it there to jot down notes and names. I'm excited about it.
And don't underestimate the Notes app on your phone. Whether you're an Android or an Apple user, the Notes app, just if you're watching something in the moment, the game, let's say you're out, sports bar or whatever, you see something, jot it down, then sit down like, okay, what did I see? That's often how I come up with a lot of my writing ideas. I'm listening to something, I'm here, and then somebody will say something. I'm like, you know what? I should dive into that topic. Let me go and pull that out. So it's free. Everybody's got a Notes app on their phone. It's a good way of keeping notes about what players you want to look at, what things you want to dive into if you're a writer or just general curiosity about something. Leverage that Notes app.
Well, we'll jump over to the AL West to finish up our discussion today. And we had a question in the chat, not necessarily relating to a bold prediction, because neither of us made a prediction about Luis Rengifo, but we had a general question about our thoughts about Luis Rengifo this year. I don't really have much strong feeling either way. He's day-to-day right now. Never played more than 127 games in a season. He's only once cracked 500 plate appearances. So for me, he's, good real-life utility guy, but not somebody I'd be interested in drafting maybe as a reserve in like a 15 team, but even then, I think it's kind of borderline.
So what I like about him is the opportunity. So right now, if you look at him, he's going to hit high in the lineup. So you have your top 4. You've got Trout, you've got Rengifo, you got Taylor Ward, you got Jorge Soler. Some mixture of that is going to hit 1 to 4. And as long as Rengifo is in the lineup doing that, I like him. But you mentioned the health risk. He's had some issues with lower half injuries, but this is also Ron Washington. Ron Washington likes to let these guys run. Rengifo has the speed to let these guys run too. So Rengifo could volume his way to some pretty good middle infield production. But again, he's got to stay on the field to do that, which is problematic for a lot of those Angels hitters with it. But if he's there, and I really like Jorge Soler this year as a full-time DH, I feel like he could go Marcelo Ozuna light on us. He's not going to hit for the Ozuna batting average, but I could put Soler in 100. If he's DHing 162 times a game for this season, I could put his numbers up against Ozuna outside the batting average. I'll take the home runs and the RBIs. It'll be close. Batting average probably won't be close. But if Soler can hit 250, that's above league average. League batting average like 243 last year. So that's all he's got to do. And he's hit that. He's hit 260. He's hit 280 in a season. So this could happen. I'm pretty excited. I can't tell about Soler being a full-time DH this year.
Yeah, I like the Soler pick. Rengifo, though, the 24 steals last year came with, bottom half sprint speed, and actually 37th percentile. You said Ron Washington, no reason to think you're going to throw on the red light for him, but also
right.
if his efficiency isn't quite as good, maybe they put up the yellow light. And just
I'll tell you about sprint
really
speed though. I would say on sprint speed, when it comes to managers, I'll lean into that. And a great example I'll use just from last season. So Alec Burleson was a 10th percentile sprint speed guy last year, and Marcus Semien was an 81st percentile sprint speed. Alec Burleson stole more bases last year. He had one more stolen base than Marcus Semien because the Nationals, the Cardinals actually ran more than the Rangers did. Bruce Bochy just didn't run that club. They weren't running, and Semien, as often as he was on base, was not running. And then you can look at Lane Thomas and Jesse Winker. Jesse Winker was a bottom 20th percentile sprint speed guy, but he was stealing bases with the Nationals. He went to the Mets, and they were like, nope, don't run. In fact, don't even attempt a stolen base. He never did. He didn't attempt one stolen base after that trade, and Lane Thomas got slowed down when he went to the Guardians. So it really comes down to the manager. Sprint speed's honestly the last thing I'm looking at these days. It comes down to opportunity plus your manager, and then your athleticism. And if Alec Burleson can go out there and steal more bases than Marcus Semien, and Jesse Winker can go out there and steal double-digit bases despite being in the 20th percentile in speed, other guys can make that happen. So that's why I like Rengifo, Ron Washington. We'll let these guys run. He let Joe Adell run last year. I think Joe Adell was 15 and 25 for stolen base opportunities. It was Leroy Jenkins out there on the base pass. And but it works. They let him do it because what else do the Angels have to do?
Yeah, that's true. I mean, they're really throwing everything at the wall to try to compete again with Mike Trout on the team, but we'll see. We'll see what they're able to do. My bold prediction. Now, I made this right before we came on and saw that positive health update on Christian Walker, but my AL West bold prediction is going to be that Cam Smith makes the opening day roster. This would be a surprise, especially if Christian Walker is indeed healthy and ready to go on opening day. But Cam Smith, acquired in the Kyle Tucker deal, really off to a fantastic start this spring. 7 for 11 with 2 homers, 7 RBI, and I saw one hit the other day, like 108 off the bat that just ate up the third baseman, unable to make any sort of play on that. By the way, Kyle Tucker 0 for 17 this spring. I think he'll turn it around. I think he'll get it going, but rough start for him. But Cam Smith, 22 years old. Now, it would be a pretty monumental rise, but don't forget, Wyatt Langford reached the majors, made the opening day roster last year after, 44 games in the minors, something like that. So it'd be a pretty similar jump for Cam Smith, who only played 32 games in the minors, but did reach Double-A last year. And, right now he's looking big league ready.
Well, and look at the Astros bench currently: John Singleton, Mauricio Dubon, and Ben Gamel. I forgot Ben Gamel was in the major leagues. There's an opportunity path. Dubon has the positional flexibility because he can play outfield. He can play pretty much anywhere you want to throw him. So that one I can see sticking. John Singleton is he can only play first base. That's all John Singleton can do. Then you have your backup catcher. So 2 of the 3 bench spots in Houston are fungible. Now they're both, you can't option either guy, but Ben Gamel and John Singleton should not be blocking anybody's paths in the major leagues. And so if Houston wants to become more than the stationary, like we said, Altuve is going to run a little bit, but this is a very much station to station team in the middle of this lineup. And if they decide they miss that Tucker athleticism, they want to get some more youth into this lineup, then Cam Smith makes a lot of sense. I mentioned Shane Whitcomb earlier. He also makes sense.
Mm-hmm. Second base is going to be interesting for this team because they are moving Jose Altuve to left, it seems. That seems pretty much locked in. Mauricio Dubon and then Brendan Rodgers on a minor league deal, but it feels like he is kind of neck and neck right now with Dubon. I don't know that, Isaac Paredes, maybe he could play a little second.
He has. He played some last year.
I guess it could be an option. Could be some shuffling in that order, but Cam Smith just feels like a guy he seems a ways away, but maybe objects in the mirror may be closer than they appear, type of deal. If you get what I'm saying, but that's pretty bold. I'm trying to follow in your footsteps and actually make these pretty bold. So I hope I did you proud.
Yeah, layups are boring.
Yeah, I mean, come on. There's no fun in that. That's not a bold prediction. But yeah, it's I'm still making my way through TGFBI. You mentioned that you're not doing that this year, but how about this for top three pitchers? Paul Skeens, Raisel Iglesias, Shane McClanahan.
That's
I'm with
sexy.
you on the McClanahan train. I know. I was hoping to get Brian Wu in this last round, but he just went. Brian Wu, I mean, he's fifth there, but that's like an all-time starting rotation. So
you would have had you were hoping to get Wu instead of McClanahan or
no, after well after McClanahan, but Brian Wu's my SP3.
Yeah, so I like Wu's upside, but but the point I was going to get at there though is he's definitely an injury risk, and so if you want to take his SP3, you need to have good options at SP1, SP2 because everybody can take an injury risk on, but can you take multiple risks on? That's what the question you need to ask yourself with this. And so, like I said, I love Wu's pitchability, love his upside, but his health history is about the length of a CVS receipt, and it could go at any time. Again, he had some issues last year with things. He was one of the guys that had the internal brace. I mentioned him when I wrote up Spencer Strider, because Wu is the best case scenario about a guy the first year back from the internal brace procedure. But even then, Wu threw under 75 innings. I still feel like I'm low man on Strider when I'm saying I don't expect him to hit a triple digit number this year. But I keep seeing people saying 110, 115, maybe at the low end 95. I don't even know if he gets that high. But that's again, he's really the first big arm that had the internal brace procedure, and he had it done in the minor leagues. That has made his way to the major leagues, and we've seen the success that he's had. But again, he's not in the free and clear injury list.
Yeah, good point. I had Wu on a few teams last year, and it felt like every other start he was leaving early with something. Then they'd be like, oh, yeah, he's in the clear for his next start. And I was like, okay, well, then he had to leave the next start with some other new injury. So, yeah, it was kind of a frustrating year, but in between, Brian Wu looked fantastic. Anyway, he's off the board, so Jared Jones off the board now. So I'm looking at Kevin Gausman, maybe Sandy Alcantara as my SP3. Who would you take between Gausman and Alcantara? Throw that by.
Well, based off the conversation we had earlier, Gausman, and not that I'm terribly excited about him this year. I mean, he was in the bold prediction, and I was fading him this year. But if my choice is just those two, give me the guy that can at least pitch 5 innings and qualify for a win out of the gate, because I don't want to be chasing those numbers all year. And what other options do you have after that? What are some of the other names that you see on the board?
Well, Carlos Rodon, who I know you took in LABR. I am not as high on Rodon, I have to say. Ks are nice, but it's injuries and whip is always a little iffy. Maybe I'll pivot instead of going pitcher. I'll go Shea Langoliers, who you also took. I don't have a.
There you go. If you don't like any of the pitchers, just take a position player and wait till it comes back to you. What spot are you picking out of?
The 7 hole.
Oh, you're in the middle. Who cares? Yeah, take the catcher.
I might have to, because Sanga's still on the board. A few other arms I like. But...
Yeah, you've got too many. You've got a lot of options. I would honestly if you're picking in the middle like that, just take the catcher and then worry about whichever. Let the market or let the board tell you what pitcher to take next. If you can't make up your mind, it'll make up your mind for you.
Yeah, because after Langoliers, it gets a little dicey at catchers. Tyler Stevenson, who I don't mind, but I like the upside of Langoliers. Francisco Alvarez, Gabriel Moreno, and then potential leadoff man Austin Wells. Kind of a weird lineup the Yankees have been trotting out in recent days. Seems like the Jason Dominguez leadoff train has stalled, or maybe completely off the rails. Also, we didn't talk about it, but the AL Rookie of the Year is pretty wide open, very interesting. I wonder if the issues Jason Dominguez has had in left could leave the door open for somebody else to wrestle that award away. Great stuff,
absolutely.
Jason. Really appreciate you taking the time, man. Good luck in your drafts this spring. Anything else on your mind that you want to mention?
No, like I said, looking forward to seeing everybody at Tout next weekend. That'll be fantastic, and that's really it. This week's article I wrote up the AL LABR recap. Would love some feedback and some comments. If you want to tell me how terrible my outfield is, I'm not going to argue with you. But that's the price you pay. When you pay for other prices elsewhere, nobody comes out of an auction fully covered at every position. Everybody's got some kind of weakness, and I fully recognize the outfield as part of my problem. And I need some things to break loose, and I've been as much in the write-up. But I always appreciate the comments people leave in the stories. And same thing in I understand our Discord. We've opened up Discord options as well, so people can come in and participate there. I've been trying to get more active in there and taking looks and things to help people out. I know we're in the peak of draft season. A lot of people have questions about who to keep, who to drop, who to target, and happy to help.
Yeah, I know James Anderson's in the Discord a lot, and definitely check that out. And if you're doing your dynasty draft right now, check out James's first-year player draft rankings, separate from his prospect rankings, of course. But yeah, I can't thank you enough for taking some time, Jason. Always great to talk with you, and can't wait to see you next week, man. Yeah,
indeed, man. Take care. See you in a week.
Sounds good. Thank you all for listening. We'll be back with you next week on the RotoWire Fantasy Baseball Podcast, brought to you by Fantrax.